Vamos a hablar ahora de impacto de la pesca y la acuicultura en la sociedad. Como, en fin, cuando nos queremos informar de cómo está el sector, muchas veces lo que protagoniza la información son cifras, ¿no? Cifras de capturas, toneladas de producto, eficiencia en las flotas, estoy molestando, o la tecnología que permite criar peces en mar abierto. Bueno, pues detrás de todas estas cifras queremos buscar las historias, porque están ahí, porque son parte sustancial de ello. Detrás de cada cifra hay personas, hay trabajadores, hay profesionales que no solo las hacen posibles, sino que dependen directamente de esos datos, de esas dinámicas que sigan funcionando. Voy a dar paso a la moderadora de esta mesa, que ya la conocéis, es la redactora jefe del diario de Faro de Vigo, Lara Graña. Un aplauso para ella, por favor. ¿Qué tal, Lara?
¿Qué tal?
Toma asiento. Bueno, entre colegas, qué bien.
Bien, bien.
Me gustaría saber cuál es la pregunta que le vas a plantear tú al público, porque están teniendo realmente mucho seguimiento esos debates que planteáis los moderadores.
Bueno, yo creo que hay una cuestión capital en este debate, y es algo que creo que se habla poco en los medios de comunicación, que es ese equilibrio entre la parte normativa y la parte efectiva del sector, de la parte medioambiental, social, económica. Vamos a preguntarles si hay ese acompasamiento, si hay ese balance claro y si la normativa, a fin de cuentas, propicia un buen desarrollo medioambiental, social y económico del sector pesquero.
Desde luego, la normativa es otro de los ejes de los que estamos hablando mucho hoy. Tenemos, además, como coorganizadora al Ministerio de Agricultura por primera vez en este congreso, y es uno de los ejes y de los conductores, ¿no?, de cómo se desarrolla la actividad en el sector. Bueno, pues yo creo que ya se puede ir respondiendo, ¿no?, a esa pregunta.
Yo creo que sí, la voy a repetir.
Venga,
si
repítela
te parece,
para que la gente pueda dar su opinión.
Así trabajamos un poquito todos.
Sí.
¿Creéis que la normativa actual favorece el desarrollo medioambiental, social y económico de las actividades pesquera, industrial y acuícola?
Bueno, pues vamos a ir dejando que la gente responda. Antes ha sido una sorpresa, tengo que decirlo, porque le ha sorprendido también a Catalina la respuesta de esta pequeña encuesta que realizamos, porque ella planteaba, ¿estamos preparados para un futuro en el que el consumo sea de células de pescado, por ejemplo? Y la respuesta masiva ha sido que sí. Así que, bueno, qué interesante es ver cuál es el pulso que ofrecen
Aparte el hecho de que aquí hay muchísima gente del sector, entonces es otro punto de vista, ¿no?
Claro.
No lo estamos preguntando a la gente de a pie, digamos, ¿no? Es gente del sector que creo que puede dar un contrapunto muy interesante de si hiciéramos esta pregunta en cualquier otro foro. Claro que
Genial.
sí.
Bueno, pues te voy a dejar ya enseguida con tu mesa, con tus ponentes, una mesa que seguro que va a interesar muchísimo, pero antes, si te parece, vamos a compartir de nuevo un pequeño fragmento en el que ciudadanos del mundo entero pues nos trasladan la literalidad del Código de Conducta para una pesca responsable, que cumple 30 años ese código.
States should consider aquaculture, including culture-based fisheries, as a means to promote diversification of income and diet. In so doing, states should ensure that resources are used responsibly and adverse impacts on the environment and on local communities are minimized.
Lo ha hecho infinitamente mejor que yo. Os voy a presentar, antes de tener las respuestas a la pregunta que os hacía hace un momentito, os voy a presentar a las personas que están en esta mesa. Se lo decía a ellos, voy a hablar en inglés y en castellano. Voy a hacer una especie de bilingüismo armónico, lo voy a intentar. En primer lugar, Carmen Ubella, que es excomisario europeo de Medio Ambiente, Asuntos Marítimos y Pesca. Welcome, Carmen. It's a pleasure. A mi derecha está Jean-Pierre Toulin, que es catedrático de Sociología en la Universidad de Jean Rousse de Toulouse, titular de la cátedra From Food Studies, Food, Cultures and Health, creada por la Taylor's University y la Universidad de Toulouse en Kuala Lumpur, Malasia. Y aquí también detrás de nosotros está Atam Sandhu, director ejecutivo de DMA Invest, que es uno de los organismos líderes mundiales en promoción comercial y de inversiones para economías fuera del G20. Hello, Atam, how are you?
Lovely. Thank you so much, Laura. And apologies, I don't speak Spanish and don't have an interpretation here. So I'm trying to follow as closely as possible. Nice to meet you.
Unfortunately, Atam couldn't make it here to Vigo because of playing issues. We're going to say like that. But let me say you are super invited here in Vigo anytime you want. You will be really, really welcome. Como no me salen las respuestas, o no las veo, vamos a empezar por la primera pregunta. Bueno, he barajado algunas. Bueno, sí, antes lo digo. Do you believe, that's the question I made the public, do you believe the current regulations promote the environmental, social and economic development of fishing, industrial and aquaculture activities? As you can say, most of the people think no. So, Carmenu, my first question is for you. Based on your experience as a former European Commissioner, what is your opinion, your assessment of the Commission's handling of fisheries policy?
Well, I think that a lot of progress has been made. However, there are still some very important challenges to deal with. I think that the CFP has managed to start embedding sustainability in fisheries through a number of initiatives like catch limits in line with scientific advice. We are moving further towards MSY. As Manuel mentioned this morning, globally, we are not having a lot of success, but I think when you compare the EU progress with regards to the global, then yes, I think we are achieving a lot of progress. The idea of balancing the ecological, social, and environmental is the main purpose of the CFP. I don't think that the credit should go to the Commission or the Commissioner or the ministers. I think most of the credit should go to the fishermen themselves, because politicians want sustainability, NGOs want sustainability, but it is only the fishermen who can make it happen. So I think most of the credit should go to them. Obviously, we are achieving different results in different regions. I cannot say that there is a uniform progress all over the European Union. No, there are regions which are doing more or less progress than others. The reason being probably that some of the regions or member states or regions in a member state don't have the capacity, the enforcement is not there, or it could be a combination of both. Obviously, very often the short-term benefits in the sector outweigh the long-term sustainability issues. Talking about Spain in particular, I think Spain is one of the member states which is very compliant. I remember during my time, I used to have excellent relations with the Spanish ministers, Isabel Garcia, Luis Planas, with representatives of the fishermen. I met this morning Javier Garat. So there is a true understanding of the need to balance. And this is what the CFP is after. And I think, yes, we are achieving a lot of. If we can take specific examples, for example, this morning Manuel mentioned the Mediterranean. The Mediterranean is the most difficult region for a number of issues. First of all, we have the northern rim of the Mediterranean made up of EU member states, and the southern rim of the Mediterranean, which is made up of North African countries, Morocco, Tunisia, Libya, Egypt, so on and so forth. There is conflicts everywhere in the Mediterranean. No one in the Mediterranean can declare its EEZ, because if Malta declares its EEZ, we end up in Sicily and in Italy. So there are all these issues, difference in capacities and so on. However, in 2017, we all met in Malta, the whole Mediterranean member states. We all met in Malta, we worked together, and we came up with the Malta Declaration, which was the Medfish Forever. It was a 10-year plan for the Mediterranean, politically committed by 16 member states. The plan was given to the GFCM for implementation. We started way back in 2017 with some 90% of the stocks in the Mediterranean being overfished. Thanks to this plan, last year, the GFCM announced that the overfished stocks are now down to about 56%. Now, I'm talking about this example because the Mediterranean is the most difficult, as I said. So if we can achieve results and progress in such a difficult region, then why not? Especially the Mediterranean. This morning we were talking about small scale. And here I would like to make a small point. Maybe not all the small scale fishermen would agree with me. But in the Mediterranean, 80% of our fishers are all small scale, which is good. The problem arises when, as small scale, they want all the support, they want all the funds, which is good. But then, as small scale, they want to be exempt from all the rules, they want to be exempt from all the policies, and so on, which I used to discuss with them and say, listen, we can only fund and support low impact. Small scale is not always low impact unless the policies are abided by. And as I said, this was the Mediterranean, and we did achieve results. Even this morning, the global picture doesn't look good. We're regressing at times, unfortunately. However, when you compare the EU progress with the global, then we're making a lot of progress there.
But my previous moderator, Katarina, said a word that is the magic word for me. It's communication. And I'd like to link this word to my first question from you, Jean-Pierre. How do you define the impact of fishing and its activity on society and its environment? And do this sector communicate properly what they do and it's important in the society?
Yes, we need to understand that. I will quote a philosopher, Socrates. A society is built on the way it produces its food and consumes its food. Several centuries ago. We can add in a modern perspective probably the way to produce, the way to transform, the way to distribute, but it's the same. And when you take the food, it's all the society who is coming. Economically speaking, okay, it's 61 million people at the scale of the world working in this sector, but it's 600 if you add the secondary worker in the secondary sector around that. But it's much more. It's much more because, in fact, through our relation with food, it's some cultural identity. People living in the place where the fishery is a culture. Like here, you choose your job, not only because there is some opportunity, there is some culture. And this culture is also the gastronomic culture, the chef, and the tourism activity. first things I did yesterday, I want to eat some fish from here and oyster. So, in fact, economical dimension. And we don't speak about informal economy in a lot of countries, where it's a way, when there is some difficulties, to get some protein, to get some food. Second dimension, nutritional dimension, of course, is an important base of protein. And we need to understand how, in the protein transition, fish play a role in certain developing countries. Fantastic role. And the distinction between animal protein, plant protein is not relevant. We need to change this perspective, introducing fish protein. So, nutritional. And nutritional not only for the quality, nutritional for the food security. We heard about that this morning. Cultural dimension, environmental dimension. There is some at stake today with aquaculture and the relation with the environment, some bad questions, some problems, but also the opportunity to solve this question. And there is a political dimension in that. The relation with France and Spain, you remember what we call the war of, okay, we have a lot of things we can manage with the organization of food. In fact, food is in the center of the society at different levels, family life, gastronomy, tourism, activity. So it's not only the people who fish and the people who transform. So that's the impact of the society is absolutely important.
Antes me olvidé de comentaros que en la misma aplicación donde antes habéis votado esa primera pregunta, podéis formular preguntas para los ponentes, para los tres, que después formularé al final de esta intervención, de esta mesa redonda. Así que sentiros libres para hacer las preguntas que consideréis oportunas. Vamos con Atam, que no lo veo. Ahí está. Atam, are you listening to me? No sé si hemos perdido a Atam. Es probable que lo hayamos perdido. Carmen, you said you talk about CFP. What goals do you think the new CFP should achieve now in the future?
I think at times the world gets more and more complicated day by day. When we talk about the CFP, we're not talking only about the rules, but we're also talking about the support to member states to achieve the objectives of those rules. And I think we need to support the funding through the CFP more and more. In Europe, I feel that there is a big gap when we look at fisheries and when we look at agriculture. Agriculture in the EU has got a huge influence. It's a huge lobby. It takes the chunk of the European funds. Whereas fisheries, unfortunately, in my opinion, does not get the same recognition as agriculture. I think we should try and address this gap. We have to remember as well that at the moment the Commission is discussing the EU Ocean Pact, which is something very similar to what we had before, which was the EU Ocean Governance Strategy. And I think that this issue should be really addressed within the EU Ocean Pact. Even more so because now the funds, we used to refer to the EMFF funds, the European Maritime and Fisheries Fund. Now that's turned into the EMFAF fund because they've included agriculture. However, some of those funds are being used by a lot of member states towards blue economy projects. So yes, we need to support the blue economy projects, but not entirely at the cost of supporting the CFP.
That's a difficult of balancing between laws
and we have to remember as well that the European Union, the policy of the European Union goes beyond the European Union. The European Union is very active in regions, in areas where we have shared resources. And there are many regions where the European Union is not alone. There is the Black Sea, the Mediterranean, the Baltic, every region. And the European Union is supporting CFP objectives even when the regions are not entirely EU. Plus, I think we need to mention also that the European Union has got the carding system to make certain that a number of countries, especially in Asian countries and so on, try to fish whilst at the same time protecting the ocean resources. What is this carding system? If the European Union identifies a country which is working unsustainably, the European Union shows what we call a yellow card and says, listen, this is not in line with our global policy and we would like you to come in line and move your fisheries towards sustainability. If you agree, we can help you through funding, we can help you through technical means to come towards a more sustainable industry. If they accept, and we had countries like Malaysia and so on, who accepted all this, then the European Union also supports these countries to come in line. If they don't, then the European Union issues what we call the red card. And the red card means that products from that countries are not allowed into the European Union. And that frightens countries. And this has been a very successful scheme by the European. I'm saying this to show that the European Union is active not just in the EU, but its policies go beyond the EU.
Welcome back, Atam. We have lost you for a couple of minutes. I'm going to make the first question. How could economies outside the G20 improve their fishing activity? I think I'm being cursed by some...
You can continue.
That's a pity. Let's talk about consumers, Jean-Pierre. I was talking about a couple of minutes ago about communication. Do you think the consumers really care about the sector, really knows it's important of the sector?
Okay, I need my slide for that. Okay, for many years, for the Ministry of Agriculture in France, I have developed a methodology to try to monitor the crisis. The idea is to listen weak signal. Weak signal theory is quite old, but with a new methodology. That means we use some barometer, that classical survey that study the evolution of food habits, but at the end, we'll ask to people, okay, if I tell you concern and dairy product, what are the main words that come to your mind? It's an association of ID, but at a large scale, on a sample, a representative sample, national representative. You can see on the right, a crisis. There is a long period of time where we can see the crisis beginning to be parametered by some people who know a little bit the question. Suddenly it goes in the media, and when it goes in the media, it becomes difficult to manage. So the question is how we can anticipate the understanding. And anticipate means how we can try to understand the question and who is concerned by this kind of question. I have bad news. The bad news is the fish are the category of product that concentrate the most of concern. It's in the French population. It's not everywhere. But the methodology could be used in other parts of the world. And if we go a little bit in depth, we can see three main problematics. The first one is chemical pollution, with heavy metal, with the question of chemical product. Okay, what we are doing? We are not speaking with expert people. We are trying to understand how the population thematize, reorganize the know-how that they can see at the TV, that they can hear with some experts, a discussion with the kids coming from university, and so on. So the second one is the question of the aquaculture. It comes from different sources, mainly some TV documentary that show some difficulties, the environmental impact, the impact on the wild population, and so on. The third one is overfishing. So when we go and we analyze what we call the, okay, imagine the number of words that we will get. So we can analyze the evolution of the word and see how some word appears in the concern of the population. And you can see microplastic, you can see mercury, you can see tuna, you can see some word that appears. And, okay, in what it's useful? It's useful to understand, sometimes to react in terms of communication. It's also a way to have a reflexive attitude. We can be proud sometimes of what we are doing, but we need to understand how we are viewed by the society. And you need to take into account that, to communicate and perhaps to have some reaction. So, if I go out of France, we can see in certain countries the question of fish is absolutely central. In Japan, for example, after Fukushima, we have developed some survey to analyze how the nuclear risk was perceived or not by the customer. And we did a comparative analysis between France and Japan, two countries where there is a lot of nuclear plants. One, there is a big accident, another one, there is Chernobyl, but it's a bit far from France. And how people organize this vision. So, to finish, one slide is missing, it's not a problem. To finish, when we analyze the transformation of the protein source, for example, between 2000 and 2020, I will just take the example of Indonesia. In Indonesia, in 2000, 17% of the protein are animal protein. And in this 70,000, 57 come from the sea. In 2020, we moved from 17 to 28.6. And the share of fish have reduced, but in quantity is more important. So in this question of the protein transition, I think all the line working in fishery and aquaculture could be interested to have a look on this theorization and to take a place in the theorization not below the animal protein. And the discussion that my colleague was saying about we see the agriculture because they are strong, there is a big lobbying, probably. But also because animal protein take the place and you are below animal protein. It's just an invitation.
So you were talking about similar ideas. Carmelo was talking about the power of agriculture. What can fishing industry, fishing sector, aquaculture can do to change that message? I mean, to have the role that it should have in the media or in the population. I mean, this is what I do. This is what I need. I'm not talking about putting agriculture back, but pushing fishing sector where it belongs. Yeah. What can we do to do that?
In my first intervention, I mentioned that we have done and we are still doing a lot of progress, but there are still challenges. If you allow me, I can mention some of these challenges.
Of course.
First of all, we talk about sustainability. The problem is that NGOs only see environment in sustainability. Fishermen only see the economic aspect of sustainability. We have to understand and bring everyone together, and the ecological, the economic, and the social can never be detached one from the other. And we cannot allow one of these three to grow at the expense of the other two. I'm saying this because we're always talking about sustainability, and we have to understand that economic sustainability is as important as environmental sustainability. The second challenge, which is a big challenge, we're talking about climate change and the effect of climate change on 1, 2, 3, 4 areas. But we have to understand that climate change is and will be having a lot of impact on fisheries, temperature rise, spawning, migration issues. These are changing, and we have to start thinking of adapting the fisheries sector to the problems, to the impacts of climate change as well. We're always talking about science, and I said earlier on that one of the topics which we drive forward is limitation of catch limitation, using the best scientific advice, 100% in agreement. We have to listen to science, but we have to listen to the fishermen as well. I had an issue some 6 years ago. ICAT, we put a 15-year recovery plan for tuna, 15 years. After 8 years, fishermen in the Mediterranean were telling me, Carmenu, we have a big problem. Tuna has come back, but we cannot catch it.
Yeah.
Tuna is eating all the fish, so we cannot even catch the fish. So I remember I called the sciences and said, listen, we have to do something about, no, we have to keep the catch limits for tuna as they are. I said, but the fishermen are seeing more tuna. I went deeper into the issue only to find out that science advice today is given on data of yesterday, 2 years, 3 years ago. It takes 2 years for scientists to analyze the data. So whilst the fisherman is seeing tuna in the sea, the scientist is still working on data of 2 years. So we have to listen to the fishermen as well. We spoke about recognition. Lack of recognition towards the fisheries sector is not only in the EU. In 2015, I visited Expo in Milan. And they asked our EU representatives, I said, can you take me to some pavilion which is showing, the theme of the Expo was feeding the planet. And I said, can you take me to a pavilion which is showing the contribution of the ocean towards feeding the planet? Not one single pavilion. All the pavilions were agriculture. Agriculture is feeding the planet. And then a TV screen with some fish going round. So there is a global lack on this. Even when we were discussing the Paris Agreement, 2015 Paris Agreement, we are discussing climate and climate change. The ocean is the prime climate regulation, and the ocean doesn't feature in the Paris Agreement. Then we had to fight, and I said, at least mention the ocean. You need to, and okay, then we got a mention. I see my friend Manuel, I'm saying this as a joke, but even FAO, it's Food and Agriculture Organization. Why not Food, Agriculture and Fisheries Organization?
You have to change the name.
No, but this is
It could be
recognition.
FAOF. Fishing.
FAFO.
Huh? Yeah.
Yes.
You have a great idea here in Vigo.
As well. And I think another challenge, Manuel mentioned aquaculture. I think Europe has got to be very, very careful because aquaculture growth is taking a very, very slow pace. When we look at Asia.
Last minute, Carmelo, please.
Sorry. No,
Please go.
just one point. Aquaculture in Asia accounts for 80% of their demand. They have 80% aquaculture, 20% wild catch. In Europe, it's still the other way around. 80% wild catch, 20% aquaculture. Yes, we say that Europe is focusing on quality, whereas Asia is focusing on quantity. This has always been the case until Asia starts catching up on quality as well. So there are a lot of things that we need to address.
If FAO changed his name, that should be any achievement. That it belongs to Conchemar, that achievement.
We're still friends, Manuel.
I'm going with you, Jean-Pierre, but me dicen que Atang nos está escuchando, pero no sé si puede hablar o simplemente es que no podemos verlo. Bueno, Jean-Pierre, please.
Yes, two points, perhaps. The first one, you said how we can change the image. Put on stage the culture of fishery. And put on stage, and it's a pity that the mayor left. Put on stage museum, connect with tourism activity, enroll the chef, the celebrity chef, to represent there is a line to do that. The second thing, you need to be careful. The animal welfare thematic is coming from the animals to the milk, dairy product, and fish. When we analyze the concern, for 4 years, the movement is start. That means you need to be careful. I'm very happy to see the mayor coming back. I was just inviting to make on stage the culture, and I know that tourism is important for you, to connect the culture of people working in the line, for example, through museum or something like that. So I let you work. So the idea of that the problem you will have to face soon is a question of the relation with the animal and the image of animal of fish coming out of the big net and the image of aquaculture, we need to be able to understand how it's received by the public and how to deal with that.
I'm going to make you a question that has been made by the public to you both. Please wear your translator. You don't have it.
I have. Where is it?
Because I'm going to ask it in Spanish. ¿Creen ustedes que el Pacto de los Océanos beneficiará el futuro de la pesca basado en el equilibrio de los tres pilares? Económico, ambiental. Claro, perdón, el pilar. Sí, la pregunta es si el futuro Pacto de los Océanos va a beneficiar a la pesca, o sea, si va a haber un equilibrio entre las tres patas, la pata social, la pata medioambiental y la pata económica, o hay una presión para que sea la parte medioambiental la que sea la predominante dentro del Pacto de los Océanos. Carmen, empezamos contigo y rematamos con Jean-Pierre.
I think we need to protect the ocean by growing aquaculture. In 2017, I commissioned a report about food from the ocean. The bottom line was that in the future, for more sustainability and for protecting the ocean, we need more culture and less capture. Unfortunately, however, when you compare fisheries with agriculture, let's talk about agriculture. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, man was just doing harvesting. Trees with fruit, and he would take the fruit. That was just harvesting. Then he learned to plant the trees and to start farming. And farming and agriculture go back hundreds of thousands of years. If you compare fisheries with the little aquaculture that we have, we are still in the harvesting stage. We still pretend to go to the ocean without planting anything, without sowing anything. We just harvest and harvest. Aquaculture is a very recent start. So in fisheries, farming is still a baby when compared to farming in agriculture. But to relieve the ocean, we need less harvesting and maybe less farming. And maybe more farming, sorry.
Just to finish, a couple of minutes because we are absolutely out of time. There, please, Jean-Pierre.
Need to find a narrative to explain how this sector is changing. 40 years ago, in the wine sector, there was a premium wine. And there was a lot of people who dreamed to sell cubiténaire. And to change the vision of the market and understand that there was some people who would like to learn how to drink wine. Have changed even the vision of the vineyard, of the people who was making the wine. That means how to introduce the vision of the customer in the sector. To say, okay, we are doing well. How they see what we are doing. And how we can tell them what we are doing. There is a fantastic thing that sometimes some industrialists say, okay, we do a lot of effort. If we compare what we are doing now and what it was in the past, it's incredible. And people have the vision exactly the contrary. How we can build a new narrative. That's the invitation.
That's a big challenge.
It's a challenge, but it's not impossible. There is a lot of sector where it was done.
Well, I'm so sorry that we couldn't make it with Tatam. I'm sure there will be other changes for us to talk to him. It's been such a pleasure, Carmenu, Jean-Pierre. Muchísimas gracias. Yo creo que hemos abordado esa dicotomía, ese complejo equilibrio entre la parte normativa y la parte económica, social. Y creo que ha quedado claro los retos que tiene por delante el sector a nivel de comunicación con las administraciones, pero también con el consumidor. Así que Manuel Barange lleva deberes para cambiarle el nombre a la FAO y creo que todos vosotros también lleváis para mejorar esta comunicación, este peso del sector en nuestro día a día. Un placer, muchísimas gracias. Thank you.